Hello once again, Sara Amundson, horror writer. I run the Make a Monster project. You request monsters and I write short stories about them, and I have a real doozy of a story to read to you this week. It's special for a few reasons. One is that this request came about as a result of the IO9 article about Make a Monster, and two, this is just a freaking crazy ass monster request. A guy named Carl Thornton asked for a monster that can harm the phantom limbs of amputees, which is just an insanely inventive idea. And the story it pulled out of me was it is the most powerful Make a Monster story I have ever written. It is really special and it has a lot of meaning to me personally. It is a little longer than they usually are. It'll take me about 10 or 11 minutes to read it. I know that means some of you are already like, fuck that, I'm out. But I hope that you will stick around because this sucker is really something and I want to share it with you. And because it does have a lot of meaning to me personally, it's possible I will cry while I read this. And for those of you who do stick around for the whole thing, I will explain at the end why it is that this has so much meaning to me. Let's get started. Missy and Tom made an odd pair of roommates. In another life, one where they both had all of their parts, they never would have shared a house, let alone been friends. They'd met in physical therapy, where they were both being treated for the phantom limb symptoms driving them utterly batshit. Somehow, despite their differences, they clicked. Missy was sunny, shallower than a raindrop splash on hot concrete, if you didn't know her well. She could gabble endlessly about celebrity gossip, which famous people were doing each other, which famous people she wished were doing each other, what stupid things the spoiled children of famous people were saying on Twitter. A bottomless wellspring of belly laughs and bad puns. She could spend an hour choosing a color of polish for Tom to paint her toenails. Missy's arms and breasts, left ear, nose, and part of her jaw had been gobbled up a few years ago by flesh-eating bacteria after she swam in a sewer masquerading as a local lake. Tom was full of shadows. He brooded. He read big, boring books on economics and Russian history, partly because he found them boring, and that was good, like feeling the burn of physical exercise. He couldn't stand the drivel on TV or the narcissism and flightiness of social media. He played piano for hours at a time, sometimes classical pieces, but usually his own music. Black, jagged, pounding melodies that roared out of his fingers and practically melted the keys. Sometimes Missy would force him to play pop songs. She'd do goofy dances for him that he'd pretend he wasn't amused by as long as possible. But he always cracked and ended up laughing. His legs had been smashed to useless flesh jelly and bone bits in a car accident when he was 17. "Will you turn the heat up?" Missy asked. Tom put his book down, scowling at her. "It's set to 65 like always. Put your slippers on if you're cold." Missy bounced up and down on her toes. "My nipples!" She drew the word out, part whine, part groan, and Tom immediately understood the significance. Her nipples, long ago ravaged by bacteria and then surgically removed with her breasts and arms by the doctors trying to save her remaining flesh and her life, were haunting her. When she was cold, they tightened into phantom pebbles of burning pain. He wheeled over to the thermostat and twisted the dial up to 75. Phantom pain fucking sucked. At the moment, he was feeling a relentless prickling and stabbing along the bottoms of his long-gone feet himself, but warm air wouldn't fix it. If turning the living room into an oven would make Missy feel better, so be it. To hell with the heating bill. Tom had been in the amputee game a lot longer than Missy. Her bright personality formed a shield against some of the demons of disability, but when that shield cracked or was inadequate, oh, how broken she was. Tom hated when Missy broke. She made these keening sounds, unsettling, inhuman wails of desolate misery that went on for so long he worried she'd pass out from lack of oxygen. Tom fucking loathed painting her toenails, but when Missy broke, he'd give anything in the world to have her dry-eyed, with her feet in his lap and candy-colored paint stinking up the room with carcinogenic fumes. God, his ghost feet were being weird today. They'd telescoped a long time ago, coming to feel as if they were attached right to the base of his stumps, which ended a few inches above where his knees used to be. Now, not only did they sizzle and sting, they felt like they were located where his feet ought to be, down near the floor. On top of that, he was feeling phantom calves and knees, too. He hadn't experienced the sensation of full phantom limbs since the days right after the surgery, and these ghosts of legs past weren't made of bed sheets or important lessons about treating people better. They were made of agony. Tom's incorporeal lower body felt like raw nerve endings dipped in piss and battery acid. He wasn't one for crying out in pain, even during his worst moments, but a cry escaped him, guttural and harsh. "Tom?" Missy said, big blue eyes wide and solicitous, and then squint shut as she shouted, "Fuck!" and doubled over. Her pink t-shirt darkened as blood spread across its upper half. She twisted and turned, instinctively reaching with arms that weren't there to peel her shirt over her head. After a beat, habit and practice took over, and she plunked down on the ground, using her flexible legs and nimble toes to pull it off. "Missy! Missy! Jesus fucking Christ! What is happening?" Tom wheeled backwards, his normally low voice high with terror, no particular destination in mind, his chair colliding with the couch. Deep gashes were appearing in the air where his amputated limbs would have been. Blood ran down legs that weren't there. Missy answered with a scream. She screamed not just because she was in pain, but because what she saw made her mind reel. Red slashes tore into existence a few inches in front of the scar-ravaged, flat skin of her chest, but they hurt as if they were being made deep in her own meat. Motion in the dining room caught her attention, and her mouth sagged open. Tom saw it too. A tall, black figure with stick-thin arms and legs like something a child might draw. Its eyes were glowing red coals above a mouth full of crooked gray tombstone teeth that jutted in all directions. One of its hands was a ball of flames that burned a bitter pus yellow, the exact color Tom always envisioned the nasty prickling buzz of nerve pain. The other hand was made of knives. But none of that was what held Tom and Missy's attention. The figure was surrounded by a billowing silver cloud of ectoplasm. The cloud was made of body parts: hands, arms, legs, feet, breasts, fingers, toes. The body parts swirled and shifted so fast they were hard to track. There were thousands of them, maybe more, all of them solid enough to make out, but still insubstantial enough to see through to the horror standing at their center. One leg became almost solid, almost flesh-colored, as the creature plucked it from the cloud and gouged it with the blades of its left hand. Tom howled, and blood spurted in the air below his right stump. The monster grabbed breasts from the ectoplasm cloud, and as they solidified a little, Missy recognized them. She'd had a great rat, god damn it. The knives flicked over them, too fast to follow, like Edward Scissorhands whipping up fancy topiary to impress the neighbors, and she doubled over, squealing like a tortured animal. The remnants of her breasts floated away in little ribbons of silver mist, blood sheeting down her stomach. Then the monster plucked one of her arms out of the cloud. For a moment, before the creature began running yellow flames up and down her lost limb, and the torture made Missy's eyes involuntarily squeeze shut, she could actually make out the bracelet she'd been wearing the day she went for the swim in Lake Bacteria. It hurt so bad, she wanted to die. "Just switch me off, God, just switch me off," she prayed as she writhed on the ground. How was it possible to feel stabbing, prickling, crushing, pounding, aching, and burning all at once in a body part that wasn't even attached to her anymore? Now it was Tom's turn to suffer again, except Tom was done suffering, though he felt faint from blood loss. And how was it possible to feel faint from blood lost from lost limbs? He'd paid close attention to the creature while it tortured Missy. Her arm had looked almost completely solid as it roasted in the flames of the creature's right hand. Not even almost. Solid. The monster stroked the yellow fire over Tom's leg, and this symphony of screeching nerves made Tom want to curl into a ball and stop existing. Except, fuck that! Life had been full of relentless pain of one kind or another for years. If it wasn't physical, it was mental. He'd been legless for over a decade, and there his legs were, right there for the taking. Missy's arms and hands floated above the horrid being's head, seeming to wave at him. He gritted his teeth and leaned over, slipping his arm around Missy's waist and heaving her to her feet. Her eyes, red from tears, met his. Understanding hummed between them. By God, they would get their parts back or die trying. "When this is over, I'm going to paint your fingernails," Tom said. "And you're gonna dance with me." So that's it. I am really happy I did not get teary-eyed during that. Real quick overview of Make a Monster and its purpose. You request monsters, and I write short stories about them. I am doing this to try to get support for and raise awareness of Dreamer, a trilogy of novels I am trying to get traditionally published. You can learn more about it on saraamundson.com. Just click on My Writing or Make a Monster. There is a link below this video to the Make a Monster request form if you want to ask for a monster of your very own. And I said that I would talk a little bit about why this story really gets me personally. And I am not an amputee, and I would never pretend to understand what it is like to be one. But I am disabled, and I deal with limitations and pain and crushing medical expenses. God bless America. And uncertainty about my future, my near future, my distant future, every day. I do it while dealing with a full-time job and while pursuing all of my writing goals. There are weeks where I look back and I am astounded that I managed to put my shoes on the right feet every day, let alone go to work and then come home and write and make these videos and look like I have my shit together. Before I became disabled, I was writing every day. I was working on a couple different novels. I was well on the way to really kicking ass at a writing career. And then this illness and this disability hit me like a truck, and I just kind of curled up in a ball and gave up for about a year. And eventually I realized I had two choices. You either kind of die inside or you fight. And so I chose to fight. And that's what I'm doing. But I need help. And the way that you can help me keep fighting is by reading my stories, watching my videos, share them with people if you like them. That's really cool to help get them even further out into the world. But the most important thing is to just, if you like the stuff that I'm doing, just please keep coming back and let me tell you more stories. That's the most important thing. Thanks. I'll see you next week. Bye.